Alright folks, today we got a 2007 Street Glide in. This is the legendary Grey Ghost. We're going to be doing a set of heated grips, Avons, and we're going to be doing a full service. We're also going to be opening up the primary, and customer requested that we have a good look inside here and give the bike a full service. So today, first we're going to do is pull these saddlebags off, set them on the stand, get this rear pipe out of the way and the floorboard. We can open up this primer and get the oil draining out. You get your bags off, you take this heat shield off, take these two 1/2-inch nuts off. You gotta unplug your O2 sensor here, and there's a support bracket right behind the starter. You gotta pull the bolt out, and then there's two 1/2-inch nuts once again at the exhaust flange here. You get your floorboard off. You got one bolt on the outside on the top here, and one bolt on the inside for the bottom. We got our drain pan ready. We're going to pull the drain plug out of our motor. Every time you pull the drain plug out, have a look at the magnet and see if there's any steel on here. Then we're going to go around and pull all our Allen bolts out of this outer cover and get it draining. You have this cover open. You want to turn your motor over, check out all your links. You want to check your tensioner, make sure your chain's not too tight. And you want to check in the bottom here as well to see if there's any filings, etc. And then we'll give it a rinse with some brake cleaner. Now we're going to adjust the clutch while we're in here. I'm going to take 11/16 crowfoot wrench, loosen the lock nut. I'm going to back off this center adjusting screw. I'm going to take this plate out and just check something in there too. This clutch, there was no free play left on the, I guess you'd call that a pressure plate, adjusting plate. So I wanted to pull this out and just make sure that these rods were not damaged or welded together. If there's no free play, then these are pushing together all the time, and sometimes they'll actually weld together. And the next part of adjusting your clutch, once you've got this adjusting plate loosened off, is collapse your cable here with your cable adjuster. You have your cable collapsed. You want to run your adjusting screw in all the way lightly. Pump your lever a couple times to make sure that the balls on the ramp are set properly. Make sure it's seated. Back it out about one full turn, and then lock that nut back into place. Then you want to adjust your cable by lengthening it until you have about the thickness of a nickel free play at the cable. Here we got a brand new primary gasket from James. We're going to hang that up on the dowels because yesterday we rinsed this all out already with brake cleaner, so it's dry. I'm going to put our clean cover back on. We're going to go around and tighten our gasket to 110 inch-pounds. So we're going to start in the center and work our way forward, center, work our way back. If you start on one end and just go all the way around, you're going to warp your cover. I guarantee it's never going to ever seal properly, and you're always going to have an oil leak. Primary, we're going to throw 1 full liter of Amsoil ATF. ATF has far more detergents in it, so you're going to get way more life out of your clutch, keep it from glazing up, and it's a little bit thinner, so you're not going to get that when you pull in your clutch. It's not going to bang into gear like it will with 2050 or any other primary oil. So we've already put a new exhaust gasket in on the rear cylinder and put a little nickel anti-seize on the exhaust studs. Now we're going to slide our exhaust back into place. Might have to put a block of wood under it just to hold it if you're doing it by yourself. So we want to put our passenger floorboard back on and our rider's floorboard as well. Put some loose spark plugs in the bike. Spin on your oil filter, and then we'll switch over to the other side of the bike. Finish up here. We're going to be replacing the air filter, so we're going to put a new one on. And I always suggest that if you're running an open air filter like this, always run a sock. It'll protect your filter from the sandblasting and destroying your filter over time. Over time you end up with little holes in the mesh, and that's not good. For the engine, we're going to use AMSOIL 2050 V-twin oil, and for 07, that's 4 liters transmission, we're going to use AMSOIL Severe Gear 75-140, and for 07, 6 speeds is 1 liter. Service in my shop is checking the brakes and pressuring up the tires. Tires I usually recommend about 38 or 40 psi. You got 1 brake in the rear, and you got 2 pads and 2 discs in the front on a touring model. Part of a service, you want to make sure you check all your brake lights, signal lights, high lows, horn, etc. That's pretty much it for a service. We also check the belt tension, set that up a little tighter. Now we're going to drop this bike down on the ground, pull the fairing off, and put the Avon heated grips on. So that'll be pretty good. First thing you want to do is put a tank protector on and a front fender protector, and then we're going to take the 2 T27 torque screws out on the inside and the 3 along the top, unplug the headlight, and pull the fairing off. All right, here's the kit we're using for the heated grips. This is the right grip. Sorry, this is the left grip. This is the right grip, which is the throttle side. This is still cable in 07. Here we have our low and high switch. It's just a switch. Unlike some heated grips, they have a rheostat in them, and the rheostat creates heat, and that's why those switch controllers are always burnt out. This is the brain box, pretty simple. The biggest thing is going to be running the wires through the bars, or however you run them. First we're going to do is take the little screws out of our switch housing. Get that out of the way. Those are T25 Torx bits. And then you'll need a T27 to take your clutch perch screws out. Do that on both sides. Because of the way somebody wired this bike up, we're gonna have to pull this fuel tank off to access the wiring for the grip. 2008 bikes only have 1 bolt here and 2 on the front. So you have to roll your fairing forward a little bit, take a marker and mark your bars so that you know where the client has their bars and it gets exactly the way it was. And then we're going to pull our handlebars off the bike because we'll have to drill some holes in them, unfortunately. You're going to drill a small 3/8 hole here and a 3/8 hole here, because both grip wires are going to come to the center here, and your switch wires are going to come out through the center here as well. Make sure you take yourself a file or a die grinder and take the sharp edges off these holes. Once you get your holes drilled up, burrs cleaned off so they're not sharp, they won't cut your skin. I like to always have my wiring inside the handlebars in shrink tube. So we're gonna put some shrink tube around here and shrink this tube. Once you get both wires for the left side attached to your string, you want to get them pulled through the bars. It's nice to see our wires are not getting peeled anywhere pulling through, so we know for sure that we've taken the burrs off properly. And over time, these wires are not going to vibrate through. Once you've got your wires set here on the length on both sides, put a zip tie on it to hold everything. Just don't put it on too tight because you'll cut your wires. So you could ideally solder your controller and your wires all to the controller for the grips right now, but I like to hang my controller up inside the fairing, and then I can cut them and solder them on the fairing and run everything nice and clean. Now, if you had your listening ears on earlier, when we pulled these bars off, you would have marked them here with a marker and know exactly where they go. So now we're going to reinstall our bars and torque down our riser caps to factory spec. Now the first thing we're going to do is reassemble our bars and our switches so that we can get our wires zip tied back into place where they should be. When you're assembling the left side, there's a little shoe for your throttle lock on these older bikes. You want to make sure that that doesn't fall out. I see that a lot. And then also when you put your perch clamp back on, make sure you don't pinch the wires or you're going to have a lighting issue or something won't work properly. Before you put your tank back on, it's always a good time to adjust your throttle cables. So you can see your action here down on your throttle body or carburetor. Make sure it closes again on its own. Now we'll get our accessory dash reinstalled. So that when you tighten up your nut for your ignition, you don't over tighten it. If you do, you will break one one day, and that'll be kind of shitty. Once you get the fuel tank back on and tightened up, don't forget to readjust the coffee cup holder so next time the guys are hanging out at Timmy's or at Starbucks, they got a place to put their coffee cups. Get the signal lights reinstalled. The next part of the step is installing the module that controls your heated grips. I usually like to hang it off one of these fairing support brackets. Nice and sturdy, it's not going to rattle around. While you're soldering up the wires here, it's pretty easy. You got your orange, blue, and yellow from the switch, goes to the orange, blue, and yellow on the brain box. And when you're soldering, make sure that all your solders are smooth. If they're not, just take a pair of needle nose pliers like I did and give them a squeeze. Then you can just slide your solder or your shrink tube up. Give it a shrink, and then you have a nice clean solder joint. Wires that are down in the water, I even use a little bit of a thicker shrink tube with glue inside. Then you want to slide your outer housing over and just shrink tube that as well. That way everything's nice and clean, clean factory look. Protect your wires, less chance of them getting snagged, yanked. Now there's two sets of red and black wires coming down off the control box. One just plain, one with an inline fuse. The one with the inline fuse is obviously your power and your ground. The plain one, you're going to run down to the two red and black wires coming from your left grip and your right grip. And these new heated grips, you can see how small these wires are. They don't use much power. So we're going to steal power off the, you guessed it, cigarette lighter. I don't know how many of you guys out there, just like me, love wiring, but it's something I really enjoy doing. It's calming and relaxing. My uncle, I remember I was about 12 years old. He taught me how to properly solder a wire when he was here from the Netherlands on holidays one time. Now you're going to want to turn your key on and just check your heated grips before you put your fairing on. Make sure they're warming up. Start on low and then go to high from there. Alright folks, thanks for watching while we put some Avon heated grips on this 2007 Street Glide. I did a full service. Yeah, thanks for watching, and until next time, have a good night. Thanks guys.